Hello, 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 everyone. This is Rosalind Brown of Your Wealth Guidance, where we help Black women on their journey towards financial independence. And we always have great speakers for you. And today, I'm excited about another great speaker. For one, because this is our last speaker of 2022, but this is a valuable speaker as we enter into 2023. And so the clock strikes 2023. A bunch of y'all are going to be putting together, New Year's resolutions. Hopefully, you have your word of the year. I have mine is written down somewhere. I tried to make it on a cute little sign, but we're going to try again. But hopefully, as you all are making plans and we're looking at another unprecedented year as we look at what's to come, what's going to change, what's going to be different. We have a great speaker. For 20 years, Pamela has been helping women improve their personal and financial wealth through solid financial life planning. She focuses on helping her clients secure their financial future so they can sleep well at night. I'm use a good night's sleep myself. Pam has become a strong voice in the area of personal finance for women. Her knowledge in this area has made her a sought after speaker. She's been quoted in articles and various financial publications. She has membership in the Million Dollar Roundtable. Membership in Million Dollar Roundtable is a highly recognized mark of excellence for the most successful in financial service professionals. She holds a behavioral finance designation awarded to advisors who have undergone training to learn to help clients make financial decisions using a rational, value-based approach. She was also featured in Women in Wealth section of Fortune magazine in November of 2020, and we are so happy to have her with us today. Hey, Herman, welcome. I might be saying, if I'm saying your name wrong, always correct me. I hate people saying my name wrong. So I want to thank you for being here. And we are sitting here. I'm sure a number of people are like, I done spent all this Christmas money, and I don't know if they're going to let me go in January. Maybe like I'm ready to go. I need a break. This is that slow week as we approach the new year. They're like, I don't want to go back. So as people are thinking about and strategizing kind of what that retirement plan and practice is going to look like, what are some of the things that kind of you hold as the primary most important things to be aware
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is one of the things that I'm passionate about is really helping people do planning, especially retirement planning and financial independence, because that's what it's all about. It's that, we weren't put on this earth just to be working or working for somebody. We want to go out and have some fun. So really looking to retire or become financially independent. But I always tell people to start, especially at the end of each year, is to do a recap and a review. It's like if you didn't like what happened this year, really you have to kind of go in and say, okay, what do I want to do differently for next year? Really report the wins and the losses because there are some things that probably went wrong. But then how are you going to correct it and how are you going to move forward? But you do have to do the recap and review. So I have a process that I go to myself as well as my clients is, okay, what did 2022 look like? Were you satisfied? Do you give yourself a grade? And I have a financial report card that I use during this time of the year as well, is to grade yourself on these different areas. How did you do with cash management and keeping your debt in a certain debt ratio fairly low? Did you have life insurance? All of these different categories, and then really give yourself a grade. And if you're not satisfied with the grade and it's closer to a C down to F, you need to do some work on it. But you need to identify what do you need to do differently than you did the year before.
Now, I know there are some people that, they like, great. I wasn't paying attention. I'm just happy the card didn't say decline. So for the people that are like, ignorance is bliss,
Mm-hmm.
what are some of the things that they should be looking for? Because some people are like, I mean, it's fine. I save some money and get a bunch of overdrives,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that might look like. What are some of the things that you talked about? Did you have some of the basics? But what are some of the main things that as you're putting together how to grade yourself, sometimes it's easier to lie to yourself because you're like, I mean, I didn't do too bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of times it is easy just to say, I wasn't doing too bad. I only overdraft twice, or three times. But it's I always tell people about, I guess to kind of take it back, is what does your ideal money story look like? Do you want to be struggling, or do you want to just be surviving? If that's not the case, how do you rewrite it? What do you want to see in your financial life? You don't want to be overdraft. You want a certain amount of money. You want all of these different things. You need to write that out, as well as what does your ideal money story look like? And then really negate what may have happened. If you feel okay with, with what occurred, then that's okay with that. If you want to improve and you want to do better, you need to rewrite your money story, and what you want to see happen. So if you're overdrafting, you want to say to yourself, I want to have plenty of money in my account where I can do the things that I want to in order to achieve my goals, versus I'm in overdraft status. So it's really going back and doing a comparison and contrast on what was it, and then what do you want it to look like, and then rewriting that money story.
And so for people who are, depending on where you are, so if you're in your
Hmm.
20s and you're like, listen,
Hmm.
I only been working a few years and I know I can't do this forever. Or maybe in your 30s or 40s or 50s, are there things that people should be doing at different intervals of time in order to get them to that ultimate? It may not be a retirement goal, it might be a
Hmm.
work part-time goal, it might be I just want to be able to, go hang out with my children or spend more time with my loved ones. So I want to maybe downgrade the obligations in terms of professional obligations. What are
Hmm.
some of the things in terms of benchmarks or things to mostly pay attention to at those different levels?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where everything, you talked about in my bio, financial life planning, because financial planning is just life planning with money matched to it. So what do you want to achieve? If I want to work part-time, but you still have certain amount of expenses, are you committed to reducing the expenses in order to live that particular lifestyle? And what does that look like? And what are you going to need? So with any particular goal, you have to, I'm sure everybody is familiar with SMART goals. You have to have things that are smart, specific, measurable, attainable, being realistic and time bound. You have to say, okay, if I want to go part time within the next 5 years, what do I need to do? Reverse engineer it. What do I need to do today in order to save up enough money to go on a sabbatical or reduce my hours? And then what do I need to do in order to save that or reduce your expenses? So that entails maybe hard sacrifices. Maybe you don't, have the latest greatest car. Maybe you don't have all of the streaming packages. Maybe you don't have all of these different things. You have to say, are you interested in that particular goal? Or are you committed? And if you're committed to that, then you do the things that you need to do in order to achieve that goal.
Now, Simone did something I know a bunch of people probably have done as well. She said she's happy she got an additional part time job. Go,
Okay.
girl.
Okay.
So she got her new job, but she thinks it made her spend more. Oh,
Mm.
girl, are you doing all the ordering of the food? Because those things are expensive. I
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I might have lost money just because I'm too cheap to pay a service fee. So, I refuse.
I know somebody was telling me about this. They ordered, from like one of these food services, like Chipotle. So the burrito end up being almost three times as much after you had the service charges and the delivery fees and the tip. You're like, you could have run around the corner and got your Chipotle.
Just go eat at home. I just just like your mom used to say, eat a bowl of cereal.
Yeah, he's in a bowl of cereal. You'll be all right.
Now, what are some of those? Because I think that's a really true thing. You see a little more money in your account. You're like, I am comfortable. I am
Hmm.
not struggling. I am not waiting until payday. How do you overcome, you're celebrating this great place to be, but don't let that be a setback on the journey?
Exactly. And that's why I'm always a big proponent of paying yourself first. So if you get bonuses or you get extra cash flow, make sure you put some aside for emergencies, cash reserve, particular goals. And then, if you want to celebrate, you'll have this kind of a celebrate budget on the side. But make sure you pay yourself first, and pay yourself and your goals first. And then whatever you want to do, in order to celebrate your wins or the increases that you got and pat yourself on the back. That's great, but there is, put some parameters on it. Put a limit on what are you going to use for celebration, but then also have that core foundation of what you're going to put aside for yourself, for your goals and your long-term goals and some of the short-term goals that you want to achieve.
So Simone, don't be ordering food while you're watching this now. Sit down and get your goals together. See if it makes sense. Yeah, you talked about this thought about time segmentation planning.
Hmm.
What exactly does that mean? How does that correlate, or how do people think in terms of that time segmentation?
Yeah, so you're really just kind of going within a certain period. So usually within like 5 year increments. So years 1 through 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and then so on and so forth towards retirement. But what do you want in each of those particular segments, and how do you plan accordingly? So if you have short-term goals within that 1 to 5, what are those goals? How much do you need to put aside for those goals? And then that's what you're working on in that time frame. Everything's going to work in tandem. You're going to still be working on your longer term goals, but you have things like if you want to put a down payment for a house, or save for a new baby or whatever in that particular segment. That's what you're focusing on. And each of those segments that you have the goals that you have outlined, and what does each one of those need in terms of resources, and then what is that going to look like for the long term in each of those segments. So for young people, if you're in segment 1 and 5, you just got your first job, or you're saving for your 401k, or you're paying down your student loan debt. Sometimes it's hard to see those other segments that are down there because you're in kind of that short term mentality on surviving in that. But it's baby steps as you're going along. What do I achieve here? And you can see once you have achievement in that particular segment, each of those segments go accordingly to plan if nothing goes off the rail. So you basically follow the roadmap down, I guess, down the yellow brick road, so to speak.
Now, Pamela makes a really good point, and I think this almost goes back to, everybody when we're 20s thinking as when I was 20s, you still get a nice little $5 pizza,
Hmm.
to make some things work. But she said she needs a good side hustle to supplement her base income to have more month than money.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's, you looking to make some more money, but you might be like Simone. She made some more money, and she like, listen,
Hmm.
the delivery guy knows her by name. She's like,
Exactly.
listen, I was work today.
Hmm.
And so if that's the case, how do you get to the point where you're struggling and you're saying, okay, I need another job, I need another source of income, or is it a balance of changing some of the spending?
Hmm. It's a balance of changing some of the spending. That's kind of where the behavioral piece comes into play. That the behavioral advisor designation that I have, it's money is a tricky thing. It does a lot to us mentally on how we grew up with money, what we want to achieve. Does it satisfy a particular need? So for Simone's situation, if she wants to celebrate and she gets a little extra money and then she's buying out, that comes from I didn't have enough in my childhood, and now I want the things that I want because I have the resources. So you have to kind of put that in check on, am I going to let that override my long-term strategy for a temporary gain? So you have to kind of check yourself with your habits with what around money and why you want certain things. So I do kind of this method with my clients is kind of a freeze moment. So when you do your freeze moments, like, okay, do I spend $25 on this particular meal, or do I put $25 away that I can do something, 2 weeks from now, a year from now, that will end up giving me more value than that $25 meal right now? So you have to kind of freeze yourself and say, am I doing this just because I don't cook, or I'm going to satisfy the need? And what is the long term implication of that particular purchase as well?
I think that's a really good point. So, I mean, goes back to Pamela's point about, do I want an extra job? So you're going to trade your time for money. And if
Hmm.
there's a way to look at a difference in way that she's trading, I think that's great. And so she talked about, she said, I meant that I need more money than month.
Mhm.
At present, the money is running out before the month end, and I'm left scrambling. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes that's a good point of just where is money going?
Mhm.
Um, and it might be that, do you want to give up so much more time? Or do you want to look at just changing careers?
Mhm.
Something totally different, where you can use the same amount of time and trade it for more money, or just from a budget perspective. And I think that even goes back to, I think, what is it, Marvinette? Girl, tell me if I'm saying this wrong. She said, "What all does your financial planning service offer, and how do we set up an appointment to discuss?" So this is very personal.
Okay.
Getting into our business, but but you might want to do a sit down. So if someone wants to do a sit down, and they also want to know what does the fee look like, and I think, depending on who you listen to or whatever, you're like
Mhm.
paying people way too much money. Um, so what does that relationship look like? What does that initial conversation look like? Um,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
ain't nothing free. Anything free probably ain't.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I mean, every advisor is going to be different. For my particular situation, I usually offer, a 15 to 20 minute initial consultation that's complimentary, just to find out what's going on in a particular person's situation and what they want to achieve. Then I go through kind of the services that I offer, anything from helping you put together a game plan with your budget, helping you develop a budget if you don't have one, all the way to estate planning, making sure you have legacy planning put in place. It's kind of those four basic building blocks of your financial wellness, which is cash flow management, risk management, which are your insurance programs, your investments, and your legacy planning. So all of that's kind of included, and it, like I said, it really just kind of depends on the advisor. Some work on a fee basis, some work on a per hour basis, some work on commission. So you really have to figure out what's in your best interest, but you would be able to find that out in the initial consultation to determine at the end of that meeting what type of services you're going to need, and then how much is it going to cost you for that.
Now, how do they get that 15 minutes with you? That's what they're
They
like.
get yeah, they get that 15 to 20 minutes with me. They can find me on LinkedIn. If you people on LinkedIn, I'm there under Pamela Sams. They could email me at pamela@jacksonsams.com. That's my email. I'm on social media, Jackson Sams Wealth on Facebook and Instagram. So they can get at me in a variety of different areas.
Perfect. So I just threw in the email address in
Hmm.
the chat. So definitely reach out. I would say do it now because
Hmm.
in the morning you're gonna lose your momentum. So right now you're like, I am gonna get my stuff together. And
Yeah,
then more will be like,
exactly.
not that bad. I ain't I can wait a little while longer. And then it'll be February, March, April, and then we'll be done.
Exactly. And this is, like you said, this is the time to strike while the iron is hot. This is where people start to think about, I want something different than I've done the previous year. And this is the resolution time. Everybody's like, I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to get my finances together. I'm doing that. So yes, you do want to do it sooner rather than later. So you start the year fresh.
And I think Pamela talked about, and I think Pam, for you, it might be a great conversation to talk budget
Hmm.
because if you can fix on the budget side, you might not have to work a second job. You might be in a situation where it's like, oh wait, I didn't realize I was doing this wrong. I didn't realize I didn't have this planning in place already. And so sometimes take advantage of those 15 minutes. If it's free, go get the free 15 minutes. Take it opinion. And I like this comment from Debt Free Diet. It says, money is behavior. It's
Hmm.
so hard to break what society has deemed the norm. And I want y'all to do this too. I did this during the holidays. Everybody is emailing you about all the deals, all
Hmm.
the stuff. And I said I was buying less stuff. And so I was like, if you are not the stuff that I need, I'm gonna send you. See, I put them to the junk instead of unsubscribe because I might want to go
Yeah.
back to my foot. But but it's a start. And it's like, some of those behaviors of I just want. And it's your natural reaction to
Hmm.
stressful day or a celebration. Are you celebrating, some people celebrate with food and you like, let's go get drinks or let's
Hmm.
get a cake or let's buy a dress, whatever that is, but it is, what is that natural? So sometimes we're thinking money, and a lot of times even when we think of just the financial advisor, we're like, all right, tell me about these investments, but it's
Hmm.
much bigger than
It's
just
much bigger. Yeah.
tell me about those investments. Um, you know,
Exactly. But you made a really good point is that a lot of times with that we're tempted. And with the behavioral piece is that there's certain things that you go through. There's anchorings, which means you see something, it's like, oh, it's $500, but now it's 350, and you're like, oh, I'm getting a deal, but you're still spending the money, and it was more than likely $350 in the first place. But that's how they get you with certain tactics on that. So you do have to be strong. Go through a lot of remove the temptations. I always tell people to remove the one click thing on these online shopping because this makes it so easy to store your credit card and then you just hit a button. So really try to, if you're out and about, take certain credit cards out of your wallet. Don't even carry them to be tempted. So removing some of the temptation as well, unsubscribing to all of these things that you mentioned, Rosalind, on, now we got 50% off. Now you need to do this and all of that. And then, of course, between Black Friday and, probably the end of the year, you get inundated with a lot of that and you would be tempted. So it's really sticking to your guns, looking at your budget. Not to say that to bribe you at all on, some nice things that you want for yourself, but be within limits. So put a budget on it. So if you need new clothes, how much do you want to spend per month on new items? How much do you need to put aside for cash reserve? How much do you put aside for retirement? So everything has its place. You just need to make sure you put parameters on certain things that you may be overspending. And to the person who wrote about getting a second job, that's where you start first. Are there ways that I can reduce or eliminate things that are already in my budget that I may be overspending on? For me, I do this exercise at the end of the year. I'll probably be doing it over the weekend. What happened in 2022? What did I spend money on? What was I overspending? I'm notorious on streaming services. I get music services and all these things all the time, and they add up over time. It's like $4.99, $9.99. But over time, it's like you end up spending $100 on streaming services per month for stuff. And do you need all of them? Probably not. So I'll probably be eliminating and canceling some of those. But that's where you start in your budget is the needs and the wants, and then things you can reduce or eliminate.
And I think these are just great kind of tips in terms of budgeting overall. I wrote down a couple. I'm gonna put those in my community post so we can share some of these later. Because there's a number of things that just make you spend money. And you're like, oh wait, I always when I buy stuff, I leave it by the door. And if you buy clothes and it's by the door, if you ain't wore and it's still by the door, take the bag boy.
Exactly.
So you get 2 weeks. If I don't love it, if I loved it, I would have wore it. I would show it to somebody. 2 weeks. And then it go back out the door. So I think that's KB mentioned a really good one. She says using cash in the areas she tended to overspend helps her to be more mindful. Because you hold on to money like this.
You spend cash a lot differently than that card. Yeah, exactly. That's why I always give my kids cash when I was like, this is what you get for cash, and they spend that cash a lot differently than they do if they were using their debit card or their credit card. So yeah, that's definitely a good tip that I always recommend as well, is to put yourself on a cash basis to see how your behavior changes, and you can kind of see where those areas that you are overspending just based on the way you're using your cash.
Pamela mentioned a good one. She said she also needs to lower her rent. Her one bedroom is now close to $2,000. Girl, you probably live by us.
Yeah, that sounds like
it's going up in the new year. And so those are some of the things. Like sometimes we're looking at these smaller expenses. We're like, get rid of all the streaming services and all those things. But if you're in a one bedroom, does it make sense to look at maybe a 2 bedroom and you get a roommate? That might save you expenses. Is it time to look at house hacking? Are there other ways that you can look at this big expense and really chop that down versus kind of trying to do some of these smaller things? And so I think this is a really good time to look at your big picture. And so, Pamela, as you're looking through the pieces and your budgeting and what's going to make the most sense and what's most important for you, there might be some bigger changes that you can make. And go back, girl. We just had a real estate one just a minute ago, I think a week ago. And she's going to do a special class too. So you could talk about ways that those larger expenses, sometimes we just think those expenses are just stuck, but they're not. Debt Free Dad was like, wow. See, Debt Free Dad is a real estate investor too. So he like, what? So those are some of those things. And that's some of the things that you can look at I think sometimes it's hard to see outside of your situation. So you like, all my friends pay this. But if you
Hmm.
have an advisor who can say, I got all these clients and this is what they're doing, these are some of the different ways that they're doing it, I think that can sometimes just be a value in and of itself, too.
Yeah, definitely true. 'Cause like I said, having another set of eyes on things really helps because you have one way of doing it. And we become creatures of habit. That's what we learn from our environment, our parents, and what we've seen. And so we don't have any other way to kind of think about it. But if you have like another set of eyes or somebody that you can really a sounding board, it's like, am I thinking this right, or am I doing this, or and then somebody to introduce a whole different concept really helps.
And I love this. So, this is a question. This goes back to your expertise in terms of behavioral finance.
Hmm.
How do you deal with clients? I'm sure every industry deals with this. So, everybody, like, they got a name. They already like, I know who this is. How do you deal with clients who don't listen? They come to you for advice and then they do the opposite. So Jeffrey Dad is an attorney, so he in a different side of the house. So
Okay.
it's not smart to not listen to your attorney, but I'm sure it's not smart to listen to you either. How do you help them? How do you help people that don't want to be helped?
That's kind of a conversation I have initially up front. It's all about setting expectations, with clients. So I have what I call a client bill of rights, stuff that you expect from me, stuff I expect from you. And at the end of, kind of our initial meeting, one of the questions I always ask is, are you coachable and will you listen? And if I get then maybe that's not the right person for you, because you do have to set that up front. If you get a solid yes, then that gives you permission on the back end when they come back and they don't listen to you. It's like, remember we had that conversation that said you were coachable, you would listen, and that this is our client bill of rights, and this is what you expect of me, and that remember that conversation. We're not following, and it's not we're not in alignment, and really having that hard conversation initially. So hopefully you can negate some of that up front with that conversation. So when it comes down to them not listening, then you can go back and have some documentation. And then if it gets to a point where they're just not listening, it's like, hey, we're wasting both of our times. You're not listening. You're not moving forward where you need to. Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to prune. I hate the word fire, but prune certain people that just it's just not going to listen, because like I said, it's wasting your time. And it's also, I don't like to take people's resources if they are not moving along and not listening to the advice, knowing that they could be further along. And I don't like to take people's money if they're not going to listen and not do the things they need to move themselves forward.
I think that's a good point because sometimes people enter in and they're thinking you're about to work a miracle. Like you're
Hmm.
working with what you got. So how does someone know, yes, I need an advisor? Or, if you looking and reading or whatever, and you're like, I could do all of this on my own. How do
Hmm.
they know which person they are and what makes the most sense?
Hmm. Like I said, really having that initial conversation, and then that way you say, okay, you want the kind of the world. No, probably not going to be able to get the world. Probably this much that we can do, but it's really just knowing yourself and having that conversation. It's like, okay, these are the things I want to get done. Is this doable? The professional would generally tell you yes, and we can do that, or no, that's not realistic, and let's work on something that could be realistic that we can get you to. But I think everybody needs kind of the basic foundations of planning. Uh, just really having somebody as a go-to person as a sounding board to put some strategies in place to give you some structure on it. Um, it's just really, what again, setting expectations on what needs to get done, and not making sure you're not have to wear a cape every day that I'm going to be super person. And which brings me to this funny, I when I first started in the business, it was this cartoon that I kept on my desk that said, this guy comes in, he's like, hey, I want to retire tomorrow. I think he had only 10,000, 20,000. It's like, this is your time to be a superhero. So
Let's do
Let's
it.
do this. Let's do this. Can you get retired tomorrow? So sometimes expectations could be rather high. So you have to kind of bring people down, but not break people's spirits, because that's what really stops people from seeking help, is that they think they're hopeless and they're not able to do anything, because sometimes people cut them down at the knees before they really say, okay, we need to do certain things, maybe not all of the things that you want to, but let's take it in increments and see what we can achieve together.
I think that brings up two questions. Now, the first question I'll ask, it kind of goes back to the do I need a financial advisor? But if they've come to the yes, I think, an advisor is the same as, a therapist. It's the same as an attorney. You interview a few and you like, I don't like the way they talk to me. Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
like that they use many big words and I don't know what those words mean.
Yep.
It it could be a number of, I don't like the way they do things. I don't like the fact that they only send emails and they won't have a phone call, like whatever it might be. How do you interview to find out, is this the match? This is almost like dating. You gotta
Mm-hmm.
figure out if this is the person. And so, what are some of the questions to ask? How do you figure out, okay, is this my person? Like, am I going to be tired every time they answer the phone, or I'm going to hate them every time we have a conversation? How do they find out? Am I working with the right person? Not the person that's going to tell them, yes, I can get you to, give me all your money. You're going to be retired
Mm-hmm.
by next week. Um, how do they figure that person out?
Yeah. For the most part, I think most people are fairly intuitive. So if you have a really good feeling from the initial conversation, because I've had people to come to me, it's like, I think you're the right person. They've been with me for the last 20 years. So you get a gut feeling if that person's going to be the right person for you. But some of the questions that you do want to ask is, how do you communicate? So I have a whole communication strategy on how do you like to learn. Are you more auditory? Do you like to see the whole big picture? Do you want to be in the weeds? Do you want to know how the sausage is made? All of these things, so you understand that person and how to deliver information. Same thing with, do you prefer phone call, email, text message? All of these different things you need to know. If you're at a point where there's some discrepancy or some friction, how do you want to handle that? Do you want me, I'm transparent. I say, you can call me out on my stuff if I'm not doing what you think I need to be doing, and we have a conversation about it. So I think it's really making sure that the person is not only competent in what they do, but that you have a good feeling about them, that they are nurturing in dealing with your situation, and will listen to you and not just come at you with, this is what I think you need to do. Everything's always a partnership. I bring options and I bring solutions, but it's ultimately your decision to make that. So I'm not pushing anything on you. So you have to make sure that person is not just being overbearing and just saying, okay, this is, I don't care what you're saying, this is the way you need to do this type of thing.
Jeffrey Daz talks about you better get Pablo Escobar. Now, there's some people that are like, listen, if he can do it, he can do it.
Hmm. Yeah.
He's making a lot of money. Now, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen? Hopefully nobody that's a business partner of
Hmm.
Escobar. But what are some of the financial mistakes that you've seen and you're like, I wish you would have come to see me a
Hmm.
year ago, or 2 months ago.
Yeah, yeah, a few months ago, exactly. Well, of course, people tapping into their retirement plans way too early, and then taking the penalties and the hits. Sometimes you just want to slap people around for that, because it's money that's there. Of course, now that the Secure Act 2.0 came out, they're making it a little bit more palatable to get to resources in emergencies if you need them. And that's why I would say, if all else fails and no other solutions, then maybe. But just to go, it's like, I don't buy a car and I'm going to go tap into my 401k and then you're going to pay a bunch of penalties. You don't want to do that. Or you don't seek the proper advice. A couple of years ago, it was a client that came to me. She was going through a divorce. She was getting some of the money from her ex spouse, but she was about to take the money straight instead of transferring it over, which would have caused a huge tax bill, probably 90,000 of taxes if she had done it wrong. So you need to make sure you don't step in it and seek proper guidance before you make any big financial decisions, because there's right ways to do things and there's wrong ways to do things. And once you put it in action, IRS doesn't care. They just say, you made it, you owe it, and then you end up on a track where you end up owing a lot more in penalties than you need to. So those are really some of the mistakes that I see, is that I think I can do it on my own. I did this particular thing. Was it right? Now you should have came to me before before you did that. But a lot of times it's taking money out of retirement plans to do things. Unfortunately, I had an older couple who, they never had luxury cars, so they wanted to buy themselves a luxury Lincoln, and he took part of his pension, his TSP money, and bought a Lincoln
Oh, wow.
instead of taking it as a retirement benefit. So those are some of the big mistakes that I see.
Oh my goodness. It's funny because there's the typical mistakes. Um and I'll definitely say, in my family, I think the biggest thing is people will say, I did this, now can you help me? And so by then
Hmm.
it's like it's gone.
Yeah.
Um but I also find that sometimes the mistake is just the thing that people don't talk about or think about. Like everybody is worried about retirement.
Hmm.
And so that's a question, they're opening statements, they figuring out what they can do with this money. But then there are a number of items that are in the bigger picture that are just simply ignored.
Hmm.
What are some of those items that people are like, yes, I'm putting my X number of dollars away for retirement, but they never even thought about or mentioned all these other items?
Hmm. For like the longer term,
Hmm.
thinking about retirement. Well, one's a big one is really, healthcare costs on their long term care. As I do planning for people, I always say that it's basically planning for the certainty of uncertainty, because things are going to pop up. So there's going to be increased cost in healthcare, long term care. Who is going to take care of you in the event that you're incapacitated? Who are making decisions for you? So power of attorneys, healthcare directives, all of the things that people don't think about. Um, I did a presentation a few months ago about, if something were to happen to you and somebody was placed into your particular situation, it had to be you. Would they know where documents to access, how to who to contact, what bills need to be paid, all of these things. So really having a well laid out plan on some of the things that you really don't think about on a day to day. Unfortunately, we live in a world where, at any time, you may or may not make it home. So what happens? What happens to the kids? What happens to your property, your resources? Um, Especially, unfortunately, in our community, we do a really bad job on having a legacy plan and having planning and having proper life insurance. So, we're like, what happened to Big Mama? Now who's going to pay for her funeral? And then you're on GoFundMe and you're doing this. Where if we had implemented a simple life insurance, even final expense to put it in place to cover the burial costs, having these things in place. So that's kind of the over big picture that a lot of people miss, is that they really focus on, I need to have enough money to retire, but it's all of these nuances of your financial life that you navigate on a day-to-day basis. But if something happened, how would somebody else navigate that? You don't want to leave a huge mess for somebody else to try to figure out.
I think that's a really big thing. And then also, Debt Free Dad asks a question, and I think we always think it'll never be us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think this one is one that we're like, it'll never be us, but then we are never thinking that it could be our parent, sister,
Mm-hmm.
brother, aunts, uncle, grandparent. It says, do you see clients falling for scams often? So, we hear about the Bernie Madoffs and, the huge type scams, but there's definitely smaller things that, they're co-signing on things, or, giving people access to their accounts, those kind of things. Are you seeing a lot of that?
Mm-hmm. Not a lot, but I see them. Just to share. My mother was recently passed, and she had suffered from dementia for several years, and through that she became a victim of financial elder abuse, because people would call and ask for social security numbers and checking account numbers, and not knowing if this person was, a bill one of the bills that she may or may not pay, she would give them information. And unfortunately, large amounts of money started to be taken from her account. So I do see that, especially with elders in your family. So if there's a way to do kind of daily monitoring, bill at some point, me and my siblings had to take over kind of daily bill pay just to make sure that bills were being paid, but then also that nobody was scamming to take extra money, for from her. So I do see it. One of the big ones that is out there is the grandparent scam that I volunteer for the AARP in my community. So that's a big one where they call and they say the grandchild is in danger. I need money to be taken out of jail or something, and or I'm in a foreign country and I'm lost or something. And a lot of times people fall for these particular scams because it's so close to them as part of their family members being in distress that you want to help out. So really, a lot of it happens with elders more than others. So those are some of the scams that are out there.
Definitely, that's hard. And I think sometimes when we go through it with our parents, it opens our eyes. And I
Hmm.
think one of the things that once you go through it with your parents, you might even think about or now bring it up to your, because oftentimes we're like, I got to take care of me,
Hmm.
but not thinking about if your parents' well-being isn't set up, all of a sudden you're taking on the financial burden of their day-to-day living expenses,
Hmm.
your final expenses. So even though you set things up, a part of your nest egg is gone because, hope you got a good relationship with your parents. Some people might not feel that way, but you're like,
Hmm.
I'm gonna make sure my parents are fine. I'm gonna make sure, their basic bills, that they have food in their house,
Hmm.
pay for their medication. So I think it's one of those things to have a conversation. How are you making sure that people are having that conversation, not just themselves, so they're
Hmm.
not just in a silo, but depending on the relationship, I always got to preface it.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
if you are going to be put in a situation, so if your parents aren't set up where they need to be and things fall on you, how do you have a conversation to bring it all in to say, we all need to know what's going on and how to plan,
Hmm.
how to make things in order?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the things that I do ask, dealing with a lot of boomers that I have in my practice, between kind of the sandwich generation, they're taking care of the younger kids and they're taking care of parents, is that, at some point, are you going to be responsible for your aging parents? And sooner rather than later having that conversation with them. And parents are hard, really trying to get to understand, because they want to keep everything to the vest. They don't want to disclose anything, how we grew up. It's like, parents like, I bring home money and that's about as all you need to know. So they don't want to get into all of the details. But and it was hard, for my mom, even when my dad passed away, to try to figure out that, she just wasn't opening up a lot. But finally, after peeling the onions, the layers, understood where she was in her situation. So it's a tough conversation to have with your parents, but you need to know, are you okay? Do you have enough resources? Am I going to be involved in this? If you don't, if you don't have long term care, who's going to pay for that? All of those things. So you do need to have those conversations sooner rather than later. I always tell people, unfortunately, a lot of the times where people are together is during the holidays. Don't want to be a party poop or anything, but it may be a good time between Thanksgiving and Christmas and everything, where people are together, to have kind of a family meeting on to discuss what needs to happen with mom or dad or the parents, and have these conversations, or at least start opening up about the resources that they have and the things that you may need to take care of in order to plan your financial life as well.
I think that's a really good point. This is the time where everybody just having fun and good in a good spirit, somewhere between the sweet potato pie and
Hmm.
game. You gotta be like, hey, I had a couple questions.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions. Exactly.
Share. Debt-free dad has and I always say sometimes, because your parents like that don't be in my business.
Yep.
Mama like, I got my stuff in order. I always say sometimes they're not willing to talk until they hear other people's stories. Um,
Hmm.
so sometimes you can steal other people's experience to
Hmm.
kind of garner that conversation. He talked about this story. This made me want to fight. I'd be like, don't be. He said his great grandmother was 103 years old, and the state sent a white guy over to have her sign over her property. She was like, "No,
Mm-hmm.
grandma was 103 years old, so
Yep.
born a different time." So they sent over an older black guy the second time, and
Mm-hmm.
they ended up having to go to court to get
Mm,
it away. And so, I mean,
yeah.
people are often, I'm in a ton of real estate groups reading about things.
Mm-hmm.
The wholesalers are reaching out to people. They're looking for houses that may not be in the best condition. Our
Yeah.
grandmama house, she doing what she can. She came over
Mm-hmm.
this and all those kind of things. And so there are definitely a number of people that are preying on these type of opportunities. And so sharing those kind of stories. I wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want anything to happen to the house that you can't pass it on to whoever you want to. They gotta be
Mm-hmm.
whoever you want to, those kind of things. And then there's people like KB. KB said it's hard for her to designate a power of attorney because she's the most rational person in the family,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm sure a number of you all have been in that situation. Like, what did people like KB do?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, if you don't want, and this is one of those things. If you don't think anybody in the family could to take over, there are third party power of attorneys and people who would be able, trustees, people like that could run, make those decisions for. I mean, try to keep it in the family if you can, but there are resources outside, kind of a third party that can do that for you if you think that nobody's rational enough to make those decisions for you. So there are some outside resources.
Yeah, and I mean KB, I definitely because I'm looking down the list. I'm like, what I want? Okay, maybe not them.
Yeah, maybe not.
And that person is still owe me money. I don't want them to in charge of the money, that kind of thing. And I will say, it's important to have accountability buddies for everything.
Hmm.
So that's, somebody to text you and say, did you work out? Ladies, did you get your annual exams? All those
Hmm.
kind of things. And so even from a monetary perspective to say, have you reviewed your documents? And maybe they're the person that you can trust. Family ain't always blood.
Hmm.
Sometimes you can trust,
Sometimes, yeah.
your college roommate more than you can trust your sibling. And if
Hmm.
that's the case, maybe that's not such a bad idea. But I think, like Pam said, to have it mapped out so you understand. And if
Hmm.
you have a partner on that journey to say, hey, who can help? Who's supposed to know what this plan looks like? Because I think that's probably the bigger problem is oftentimes something happens and people are like, she would have won it. I'm like, chat, I wouldn't have wanted
Yeah, exactly.
it.
You know that. You know, be better than that.
So bad.
Yes.
I wouldn't want it. but it's like who knows? And so if you have to go before a judge, the judge is like, of course, maybe she would have wanted you to be in charge. And you're like, now I wouldn't even let her plan the family vacation, let alone manage my whatever that might be.
Hmm.
But it's important to at least have some type of plan and have somebody that knows
Yes.
what the plan is.
That knows what the plan is exactly, and have it written out as much as you can. And how I deal with a lot of single women in my practice, single by choice, divorced, and widowed. And I always tell them once they get their documents in place, is put it on a thumb drive, tape it to your refrigerator or wherever somebody needs to find it, and it has everything on there. So if somebody was to step into your life, it would be on there and they would know how to execute the things that they need to. So, that could be an idea for some people who are single and just need to have resources available, that somebody needs to know what's going on so they can do.
Jeffrey says if y'all start acting goofy, he gonna leave everything to the Pit Bull Association of America. I love dogs. You need a guardian for your pet. I'm available.
Yeah, sometimes people be leaving these pets like these huge inheritance. I don't know.
My mama gonna keep my dog, and she gonna have enough money so he can live a wonderful life. He gonna
There
live
you
the
go.
soft life, the soft fluffy life.
Yeah, they do have pet trusts. I have two clients that we set up pet trusts for birds and some cats. So yes, they're out there.
And that's important too, because I don't know if y'all know, I foster dogs, and
Hmm.
people give up their dogs unfortunately because they get older or
Yep.
because they pass away and they don't know the next person. So somebody don't like your pet, debt free dad,
Hmm.
so they're gonna be like, he had to go. So you want to put that into play too?
You want to put that in the plan. Exactly.
So I definitely see that. We see a lot of pet surrender. So put that in the plan. Make sure we know. Y'all can write me down. It's two dogs around here somewhere. I'm surprised they haven't hit the door yet, but put them in the plan. Now, Marvin X, I think she had a really good statement. She said she wants to retire again in 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I was talking to my mom about this not too long ago. I had an aunt who retired, and just knowing her lifestyle, I said, she probably won't make it 90 days. Like she'll be working again for free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so, and she is working again for free. Basically doing the same thing that she was doing, making money. And it's because so many people retire and they don't have anything that they're going to.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's you want to retire on a kind of cycle. And I remember we interviewed Shar not too long ago, Shar Winter, the creator of Expat app, and she talked about wanting to be able to kind of do this cycle where she works a few years and retires for a few years,
Mm-hmm.
which sounds like an ideal life. How does one plan for that type of setup? Because most financial calculators are like, all right, work until 65,
Mm-hmm.
70%, 80% of income, and then add in some social security, like those kind of things. So most financial calculators are not set up for almost this new thought process of life
Mm-hmm.
of I'm going to really give my all to some company for X years, and then I'm going to take a break
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe do it
Yeah,
again.
and then restart again. Yeah, it definitely takes some customization of excuse me, some of the software that's out there. Like you said, the traditional one, so it'll just kind of take you from point A to B and throw in a couple of variables and then spit out some results at the end. So really developing a customized plan where I deal with a lot of people who want to take sabbaticals. They just get tired of their job and they're like, I just want to take a sabbatical for 2 years, and then I'm going to hop back in. So setting aside what are you going to need in that 2 or 3 year period for income, where is it coming, how much your expense is going to be, and then starting that segment and then hopping back in what that segment could look like, and then fully retired at some point. So there's kind of stop gaps in there, but you do have to have a customized plan to see how that all plays out, so you have enough resources in each of those segments.
So that's another thing. Those 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, listen, I'm gonna pull my hair out when I get back to work on, Monday, Tuesday. If that's where you are, get your 15 minutes in and figure out, okay, I just gotta make it. 5 more months, 6 more months, another
Yeah.
year, and then I can take that time off. Because
Mm-hmm.
I know we talked about a little while ago about the traditional retirement of what American retirement looks like. I know sometimes
Mm-hmm.
when they like, American retirement look different, where we like a long weekend is a vacation.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not taking 3, 4, 5 weeks off, you haven't even started to breathe yet. I tell you, that's
Mm-hmm.
something I was like, I needed some more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
30
So,
days.
and yeah, this is you had mentioned, in this country, statistically, we get a lot of, people who work, traditional 9 to 5s get a lot of PTO, and we still feel guilty about taking it. It's like you get it, you accrued it. Go ahead and take your time off to do that. And I call them, kind of these little mini retirements. So you do like 3 weeks here, 4 weeks here, or whatever. But of course, everything requires planning. But they're kind of mini retirements. So you're not all the way until I'm 80 and now I want to go to Antarctica and I want to do all of these things. You're way too old. You want to basically try to do these things when you still have the resources, number one, and then also the health involved. But really plan those kind of mini retirements, 3 4 weeks if you can.
And I think that's a big thing because everything is a money discussion.
Mm-hmm.
We had a kind of a closed session with just the girls a little while ago when people were talking about their why
Mm-hmm.
behind financial independence, and one was simply so she could stay home when she finally had kids. So she hadn't even had
Mm-hmm.
kids yet, and she's like, I want to be able to be home for the first 5 years. That is
Mm-hmm.
not a luxury afforded to everyone. That is
Yep.
definitely a money decision. Most people are like, oh, well, it's a family. It was a money decision. Family gonna
Mm-hmm.
come together and figure out how much money we have to make this happen. It could be, do I want to move closer to family or take a job change, maybe take a
Mm-hmm.
pay cut. I think after COVID, either you hate your family more or you love them more.
Yeah.
So you might want to be around them that much more. You might want to take more breaks. You might want to live a little bit more. Life changes your perception on things and where things stand.
Hmm.
And having a second voice to, throw things at and say, does that make sense? Is that possible? Is it plausible? I saw this one video and somebody was retired in 5 weeks because they did, maybe not. Maybe not. And so, Pam, in terms of, I know we're like right up against the hour, in terms of if someone is saying, yes, I want to retire in X years, and they want to set up this call with you, what are some of the things that they should do tonight? So they should jot down, the when, the how much, like what are some of the things that they need to have prepared so they can have a good conversation with you?
Definitely the win, and then how much lifestyle, what lifestyle you want to live in retirement. I always tell people to the shoot for the moon. Whatever dream it looks like, and then we go. We start scaling back from there if we need to. But what do you want to do? A lot of times what you had mentioned before. My sister went through it, was retired all of about maybe a year, and then had to do something different because nobody really thinks about the lifestyle and retire. What are you going to do? Now you have 24/7. Nobody's telling you where to be, where to go. The alarm's not going off. What are you doing with 24/7 on that? So I always tell people to think about that as much as the money piece of it. And then also, are you going to stay in your area? Do you going to live closer to family? What is that going to look like? You're going to change states because certain states are more expensive than others. So you need to know in general. You don't have to know all of the nuances and the detail of it, but have some understanding of what do you want in retirement. And then we can kind of work backwards from there after you kind of laid out, this is the way I want to see it. This is kind of my dream, ideal lifestyle in retirement. This is how much I think I'm going to need. And then we can kind of work the numbers from there.
Perfect. And then once you do it, go back to mom and them and say, I did
Hmm.
this. But y'all got some, y'all got anything in place? Don't let them say yeah.
Yeah. Don't let them say yeah.
Yeah, that's it. We got it. We got it all taken care of. So make sure you get your own house in order. That's just like being on the plane. Get your mask on
Hmm.
first. But then look over at the rest of the family and say, but what y'all doing? Like y'all,
Hmm.
know about y'all been sitting around the limo as we get ready to get in to go to the funeral, and they like, we need a little more money.
Yeah, we need a little more money.
We need a little
Exactly.
more
Or
money.
how are we going to pay for this? Or you got to postpone the funeral because people scrapping their nickels together. You don't want to be that.
You don't want to be that. You don't want to deal with that. That's not the situation we want to be in, and we want to get away from that. So once we fix ourselves, put our own mask on, look around and talk to your mama, your cousin, your sisters and
Hmm.
brothers, and all those, and say, "I've done this. Now your turn to share."
Hmm. Exactly.
So I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for your engagement. I hope you all got something out of it. And I hope you all have Pamela's email address. Of course, you can find her on LinkedIn, Pamela Sams. You can email her as well for your 15 minutes so you all can chat, see if it makes sense, see if this is a relationship that you all want to have and continue. And that's Pamela at jacksonsams.com. And
Hmm.
then I can't wait to see you all at our next Money Monday in 2023. I got some great stuff coming for you. So I hope that you all, one, are getting the emails, but that you are going to join us again. And I hope to see you all in retirement and living your best life pretty soon. Thank you so much, Pam, for being with us
Yeah.
today.
Thank
And
you.
I can't wait to see you all in 2023. Have a happy new year.
Happy New Year.